Well, now joining me in Katz's Corner, to my far left, Villanova head coach Jay Wright, fresh off a Final Four appearance last season in Detroit. And to my near left, Kansas head coach Bill Self. He coaching the #1 Kansas Jayhawks. At least that's in my poll.
That was 2 years ago.
I don't know if that matters. Won the national title 2 seasons ago in an epic overtime win over Memphis. But before we get to their teams in 09-10, the NBA draft, somehow both of you guys escaped losing key players. Cole Aldridge, Sharon Collins stay put. Scotty Reynolds flirts with it, comes back. Why do you think your two guys didn't even bother with it?
I really don't know, because we were prepared going in that they may both test. I really thought Sharon probably would. But this was a point guard heavy draft. And if he does what he's supposed to do, much like Scotty, I think, that he could go into it next year with a much better chance to be picked where he feels like he deserves to be picked. And with Cole's just starting to scratch the surface. And I think from a talent standpoint, he could go. But there's some things that he knows he needs to improve on with his game, and certainly strength is one of them. So, you know, I hope they both made wise decisions. I know we're going to benefit from their decisions, though.
But you know the way it works. I mean, there was a lot of buzz about Cole Aldridge. He easily could have been a lottery pick. So
I think so.
How did he dismiss that kind of talk?
He didn't. You know, he's one of those guys that his circle is his family and the coaching staff, and I told both of them, I said, hey, before you make a decision, yes or no, let me get as much information as I can from all the general managers, because they'll let me know where they have you on the board and what their needs are. And they both told me, Coach, you don't need to do that. We're coming back. And you know, they're playing at a pretty special place, and you know, they've got obviously going to have great opportunities in their future, but it's kind of unique, because I've had several players in the last couple of years that wanted to go. These are two guys that actually are serious about school and want to get their degree. Not that the other guys didn't, but there was just too much influence for them to leave. There was too much influence on these guys to stay.
Both of you guys had a player that played with USA Basketball over the summer, Corey Fisher, with the World University Games out in Serbia, and Tyshawn Taylor wins a gold medal in New Zealand with the under-19. Now, he's not a guy that people talk about when they talk about Kansas, because it's so driven on Aldridge and Collins. What did that do for Tyshawn's confidence?
I think it'll do wonders. You know, Tyshawn has been a guy that has been able to lurk in the shadows on every team he's been on. You know, their team at St. Anthony's won the national championship. The USA Today national championship. He's the fourth leading scorer on that team. He comes to Kansas, he's our fourth leading scorer, third leading scorer, something like that. And he goes to the under-19 team, and although it was balanced, you know, he led that team in scoring, even though it was very, very balanced. And so I think he probably feels pretty good about himself, you know, to the point where he hopefully, like Jay talked about his guys, hopefully he's going to have a breakthrough year, because he's very, very talented, and he can do a lot of things athletically that nobody else in our program can.
You know, one guy we didn't mention, Zambia Henry.
Yeah.
A lot of news earlier. Was he going to stay or not? Obviously, it was a lot about nothing, because he stayed with you, and he's not going anywhere. So with Zambia Henry, with a team that's already was probably projected #1 even before, you know, he goes from Memphis to your place. How do you mix in a player of that caliber into a team that was pretty cohesive last season?
Well, last year, you know, we had two guys that scored the ball, and hopefully we get a third or a fourth guy score the ball different games, but never really able to pencil in who that guy was. And because we were so young, we just inconsistent. But I think now you have a legitimate big wing that can score the ball, and you can do some different things with him, post him, and do some different things. And we also have Marcus Morris that I think through recruiting will allow him maybe to play some on the perimeter, even play with Xavier some, and we can play really big on the perimeter. So I think we'll have more options. I think last year, this is who we are. These are our 1, 2s, and 3s. These are our 4 and 5s. Hopefully we'll be able to be a tougher matchup for some teams throughout the year.
All right, so if you can't pick Kansas #1.
Villanova. God.
You're going to go Villanova? I knew that was coming.
I tell you what, I do like Jay's team a lot. And the one thing, you know, as coaches, I think we evaluate ourselves and we evaluate other coaches on two things. Do we get them to play as hard as they can, and do we get them to play as unselfish as they can? And I think Jay does as good a job as anybody in the country there. And there's many coaches out there that do that, but his team's certainly capable. But a team in our league that a lot of people are talking about, and rightfully so, is Texas. You know, we're deep. Texas can go 10 or 12 deep themselves, and they've really improved their perimeter shooting through recruiting, and they have you know, Damian James is another guy that Longhorn fans will benefit from coming back, and then they have one big guy inside that's kind of like the X factor in Dexter Pittman. I mean, he's as hard a guard to anybody when he's playing well. So I think the Longhorns will have a chance to be there in Indianapolis as well.
All right, I got 2 more teams for you. You take Michigan State in a second. You take North Carolina.
Next year?
Next season.
It's going to be interesting. They're going to have some young talent, and they lost some great. They've lost some great leadership. You playing that team in the Final Four, they were men. Those guys were committed men. So they're going to have some work to do, but they got great young talent, and Coach Williams does a great job with young talent.
Okay, Michigan State.
Well, and on paper, to me, they should be better than they were last year. You know, they did
Even
lose.
though they lose Suton?
They lose Suton, and Suton probably beat us. Of all the guys on their team that played the best against us in the 16 game, he was probably the guy. But I like their team. You know, Morgan fought injuries and last year, and he's a potential, you know, All-American type guy. And the thing about Tom's teams is they're tough. They're going to rebound. They're not going to beat themselves. And so they're a team that would have a great chance of getting back to Indianapolis.
What is it with the Big 12? Michael Beasley, Kevin Durant, and what's his name? Blake Griffin. Last 3 seasons. Yeah. Who's going to be this year?
What's unfortunate? I just want Kansas to get one of those guys. We got to recruit better.
What's it going to be like without Griffin in the Big 12?
Well, there's 11 teams that's going to love it, you know. But he was great for our league. You go back, you know, the Big 12 is obviously located in an area that doesn't get as much national publicity because it's not as populated as the Big East or some other leagues. But it's a tremendous league, and you play fast and aggressive. And to think, you know, probably, you know, taking Hansbrough out of the mix, probably the 3 most dominant guys in college basketball the last 3 years, you know, all come from our league. So we're pretty proud of that. But certainly what Blake did this past year is remarkable, and to see, you know, Blake Griffin was cut, if I'm not mistaken, with Cole Aldridge from the USA traveling team one summer. And to see those kids.
Were you coaching that team?
I hope I didn't come. No,
but
I think I
rightfully so. Rightfully,
they were both young. To Jim Boeheim about that one.
They were both young. They were both a year younger than most of the other guys, and to see how those guys have progressed, I think speaks wonders. And the thing that through failure or through hardship is when these guys grow the most. And these guys didn't have it handed to them, and they've had to kind of earn it and fight their way and play with the chip on their shoulders. And nobody plays harder in the college game than what Blake Griffin did the last couple of years.
Now, there could be another one next season. He had a pretty good game against you guys, and we're going to talk to Greg McDermott of Iowa State coming up. Craig Brackens.
We held him to 42.
Yes.
and actually did a good job. So
that was his breakout game. Could he potentially be one of those kinds of players next season?
Yeah, he's potentially an All-American type guy. He's got size that can shoot the 3, and he can post at 12 foot, and you know that's a tough area to trap and go double team and things like that. At least it is with us, and so he'll be a matchup problem for a lot of teams out there.
Now, I talked to John Thompson III earlier of Georgetown, and there's a team that beat Connecticut on the road. Obviously had some troubles once they got into the heart of the Big East, but Greg Monroe comes back. When you size up the league and you've had good rivalry games with them, where does Georgetown fit into the Big East?
You know, if you would have asked me who's a team that I think everyone thinks West Virginia is going to be very good, and they are. But that's the team that they were just young. Bill mentions being strong up front. You know, with Chris Wright and the big guy inside, that's a hell of a start right there. And those guys played a lot last year in tough, close games. I think Georgetown's a team that people aren't talking about as much that could really go into the tournament and be very good in our conference.
Well, these are definitely not sleepers here. Villanova, I think the favorite in the Big East, head coach Jay Wright, and of course Kansas head coach Bill Self, winning a national title 2 seasons ago. Now the favorite, yes, all the pressure on Bill to win it in 2010 in Indianapolis.
Thanks.